Welcome to part 2 of reading books I found at Dollar Tree. If you loved anything written by John Green, but especially Looking for Alaska and Paper Towns, or if you loved If He Had Been With Me or If I Had Told Her, then I have a book that will crush your soul, but will also give you those feels that those books gave you, because that's how I felt when I read this one. And by the cover, you would think it's this beautiful, really fun romance book. Let me tell you, it is not. So this one is called As Many Nows as I Can Get. And ironically, I also found this at the dollar store. It does not look like a dollar store book. Like, it looks like something I would find in Barnes & Noble, but I've never seen it there. It might be there now, I don't know. But this book, let me read you the synopsis and you won't believe what actually happens. In one impulsive moment, the summer before they leave for college, overachievers Scarlett and David plunge into an irresistible swirl of romance, particle physics, and questionable decisions. Scarlett and David have known each other all their lives in a small town, Graceville, Colorado, where David is just another mountain in the background until one day he is suddenly so much more than part of the landscape. Magnetic, spontaneous, David is a gravitational force. And Scarlett, pragmatic, wry, eye on the future, welcomes the whirlwind he brings, even as she resists it. Moving between the present and the past, this is the story of a seemingly grounded girl who's pulled into a lightning strike romance with an electric charged boy and the enormity of the aftermath. It's an aching, transporting reminder that between the past that shapes us and the unknowable future, we have only the present to forgive ourselves and forge ahead. So, I thought I was getting myself into a cute little romance where the characters would grow and just come together, and I could not have been more wrong. I remember the first time I read Looking for Alaska, and I was so crushed by the ending that I felt like I'd been lied to and that I had been like scammed on this book. And when I read this one and just more and more stuff was happening, I was like, what is this? This is not what I was expecting. I was expecting this super cute little romance, and I got this tragic, heartbreaking novel about this girl who is in high school with David, has known David her whole life in this small town, and then she goes off to college and everything in her world has shattered, and everything is so difficult and different than what she thought it would be because of a reason that I'm not going to tell you because spoilers. But I did really like this book. It's a super quick read, but I was so sad for most of this book because Scarlett is taking on so much, and just the way that her story unfolds, it's like the back and forth, and she basically describes it as like her life is a series of nows. So back then, it was now I'm in the lake swimming with David, now I'm in the car after my time with David, now I'm in college, but now I'm in high school at a party. Like, that was so interesting to me, and Scarlett is like this super smart physics nerd, like she's gonna be the next Einstein kind of thing. So it was really interesting with what the author did with that, because Scarlett was really relatable for me. Not that I'm a science geek, but just the idea of being this overachiever who's done so much, and then you go to college and you realize that you're kind of like everybody else, but then Scarlett also has all these other things going on that I could not have related to at her age, nor could I now. But it's just so interesting how this author set this book up. I can't say too much without giving it away, but basically I was just floored. I felt like I'd been lied to and scammed. This book did not make me cry because I was holding it together, but it easily could make you like sob. It hurt. Like, this book hurt. And David was such a crazy character, but I really loved him. And so this book just made me so sad, and like the idea of what could have been and the what ifs and like if things had been different, like all those things. I loved this one. It definitely felt like If He Had Been With Me part 2. Like, it's a very similar kind of story, and yeah, that's all I'm gonna say on this one. But I do find it interesting that most of these are the author's first novel and they ended up at Dollar Tree, and I'm not sure what that's about. But it's pretty cool to like read these authors and their first work because I haven't heard of them. So it's just been a really fun experience. And I also thought it was so cute because the cover looks like this, but then the actual color is like this cute little blue. So I love that. I love when hardcovers look different than the book jacket. That just makes me so happy. But let's get into the Goodreads reviews for this one. So this one is 3.77. All of these are pretty average reads. I rated this one 4 stars. I think I'm gonna keep that just because it really felt nostalgic and it was heartbreaking, and I'm a sucker for a heartbreaking book. Like, I just love it. But let's get into other people's reviews and see what they said about it. So this one has quite a bit 5-star reviews, which is really nice. But let's look at the 1-star first because I am intrigued. Oh no, this person didn't even finish it. Did not finish at 53%. I was just bored, and the choices the character made were sometimes not sitting well with me. Also, she was girl-hating other girls, and she was different than the other girls, and ugh, I've tried many times to read this, but I can't get more than a few chapters done in one sitting. So I'm putting it down as I don't want this to put me in a slump. Honestly, I respect that, Allie. I hope someday you can finish this book, but I don't blame you for not. It's okay. This was kind of a mess, which is sad because I had high hopes. Besides the awful writing style, and the characters were also very unlikable. Well, I could see that, but a lot of people did not finish this one. That's crazy to me. I was so intrigued. Annoying science snob has a crisis over not being perfect. All right. People feel pretty strongly. Okay. Let's look at the 5-star reviews because I'm a little discouraged by that, not gonna lie. T said, 5 stars. I'm not sure if I've ever read a book that kept me in a state of melancholy from beginning to end while interspersed with bouts of bone-deep grief. Honestly, relatable. Although it might be more my personal response to the book rather than a universal one. Regardless, the story was not only impressive by the emotional reactions it evoked, but also in the way the author kept me surprisingly captivated with her non-linear storytelling. Honestly, I'm having a hard time giving this book justice since I was so emotionally invested. I guess that speaks for itself. While I might not agree with some of the choices made in the story, it was beautifully conveyed with timely messages for today's older young adults. I think that is beautifully put. I'm gonna like this one because I love that. And I will say, when I started reading this one, I was a little put off by the time jump because it made it kind of confusing with like what was happening in the moment and what was happening in the past, and I wanted more of what was happening in the past. But then as the story continues to unfold, what Scarlett is doing makes more sense, and like the idea of the nows makes more sense, and so it does all come together. But I was a little put off by that at the beginning, but I just pushed through and obviously still ended up really liking this one. Someone else said, thanks, Shauna. My eyes are swollen now. To be honest, I just bought this because of this beautiful cover and because I found it at a used books online shop. From the first second I started this book, I fell in love with it. The writing style, the time jumps, and the realness. I thought this would be about a cute road trip, but no. And the moment I found out what it was really about, I was so angry and sad, but the heartbreak didn't start there. It was just building up. Amen. That's how I felt. Get yourself a tissue box because you will need it. I want to read anything that Shauna is going to write next. I started crying again after listening to the song. Okay, I don't know what's about that, but honestly, this was just such a good book. It was so unexpectedly sad, but it is what it is. So now I actually only have 3 left. And my next one is We Are Still Tornadoes, which is actually written by a man and a woman together. So that's really exciting. I'm really excited about that because it's been a while since I've read a book that was written by 2 authors changing like the points of view. But I'll read you what this one is about, so that way in the next thing I don't have to say that. Also, the cover is just really cute. But anyway, growing up across the street from each other, Scott and Kath have been best friends for most of their lives. Now, they've graduated high school and Kath is off to college while Scott stays at home trying to get his band off the ground. Ooh, we got a band boy. Neither of them realize that their first year after high school would be so hard. Fortunately, Scott and Kath still have each other, and it's through their letters that they survive heartache, annoying roommates, family dramas, and the pressure of figuring out what to do with the rest of their lives. And through it all, they realize that the only person they've ever wanted to turn to is each other. Oh. But does that mean they should think about being more than friends? One thing is clear, change is an inescapable part of growing up, and we share unbreakable bonds with the friends who help us navigate it. This funny, extraordinary, and deeply moving book, set to an awesome 80s soundtrack, captures all the beautiful confusion and emotional intensity we find on the verge of adulthood and first love. So I'm excited for this one. I'm anticipating it'll be like 4 stars. It's also told through letters, so I think it'll be a really quick read. The lighting is so weird right now because it's like sunny but also cloudy, and the sun is like right in my face, but then it's cloudy and so the room is dark. So I'm not a big fan of the lighting right now. But anyway, I have another book update. I just finished We Are Still Tornadoes, which I think the cover for this is super cute, and then the book elements are also very cute. It's like these triangle designs that look like a tornado in a very simple format, which I thought was pretty cool. Honestly, the whole title isn't fully fleshed out. Basically, it seems like the valedictorian of the school that the main characters are from gives a speech and he says, "We are still tornadoes," which I don't understand what that means, but they kind of just make fun of it as main characters. So yeah, the actual title never really goes along with the book, but I guess it's just a cool, fun title, and it definitely made me think this book would be way deeper than it actually is. So I had high expectations, and this book did not meet those, but it was still a really, really fun and cute read. Basically, Scott is staying in the hometown of both of these main characters, and he's working at his dad's clothing store. And Kath has gone off to college, so she's away from their small town, and they send letters back and forth to each other because this book is set in the 1980s. So they actually don't have phones or anything like that. So they write letters back and forth, and we get to know their story through the letters and like little notes that they write to each other throughout the book. And I read this super fast just because of that element of it, where it's just letters that the characters write back and forth to each other, which was really sweet and just really cute. And I always love a slow burn romance that's set up that way. And this book did have some real life elements, so it wasn't just like, I mean, it was a sweet, cute romance, but the characters are also going through pretty significant things and changes in their lives. So I thought that was really cool because it just felt really realistic, as if they actually pulled these letters from them. So all in all, I probably would give this like 3.5 stars. I might have rated it 4 stars on Goodreads, but it lacked the depth that I thought it would have from the title, but it was still a really good read, a cutesy romance. But let's see what Goodreads has to say about it. So once again, I feel like all of these dollar store reads are pretty average reads for people. This one is 3.88 with only 1,859 ratings, so not that many people have read it. And let's see, oh, first one right off is a 5-star read from 7 years ago. OMG, I loved this book. I thought for a minute I was going to toss it because of Stephanie. At least I think that was her name. She was so horrible and only had a few parts, but I didn't like her at all, and now don't even know if that's her name. It started with an S at any rate. The name of the book, We Are Still Tornadoes, is because that was their school name and someone gave a speech about it at graduation. I love the 80s, y'all. I mean, I was born in the 70s and still. And when Kath and Scott write to each other, they talk about all kinds of 80s music and things like that because this is set in the 80s, and they talk about new music coming out, and it made me flip my top. Okay, but that's kind of a weird saying. But anyway, that's what Melissa said for her 5-star rating. I will say it was kind of fun and cute that they are teenagers in the 80s. They're going off to college in the 80s, and so there were a lot of references to new music that came out, like Michael Jackson's Billie Jean and like that whole album, I think the Thriller album. So I thought that was pretty cool because obviously those are such popular songs now. Like, those are just classics and songs that everybody knows, everybody talks about. So the idea of thinking about when it came out for the first time and people first started talking about it, it was just kind of cool. It was unique. There's another 5-star read. Stacy said, "This book wasn't even on my radar until I received a surprise copy from the publisher. The synopsis sounded like something right up my alley. I was a bit wary of the letter writing format, but I loved it. I loved the banter and the way their relationship progressed. The personalities of Kath and Scott come shining through, and I really enjoyed only learning what was on the page. Overall, it was a quick and cute read. There were a few angsty moments, but it was so slight. This book is almost entirely all fluff, and it's delightful." I would agree with that. It's just a cute little fun read. I really liked the characters. It was just a good refresher, I feel like, when you need something that's really light and just a good quick read. And I also like the letter writing format and how you only get the information from the letters. It was a bit confusing at first and a little bit hard to get into, but then once you do, it's like just a quick read. But let's find some 1-star reviews and see what they said. Vanessa just said disappointing. Lynn said, "I did not enjoy this book at all. It's just a bunch of emails back and forth between two friends. I don't consider that reading." And then someone said they aren't emails, they're letters, which is true. Kind of rude. I don't consider that reading. Like, it's a whole format. Like, some people write their whole book through letters. Honestly, nobody really gave a reason for 1 star other than 3 people. I don't even know how to summarize how I feel about this book. This book is a series of letters between 2 close friends. At first, I thought it was a great concept, and as I was going through the book, there wasn't much to go on. It's probably aimed at younger readers, but there wasn't much of a plot. The ending of the book was extremely cliched, so cliched, and it just came out of nowhere. It was not the right book for me at all. The ending was not, it did not come out of nowhere. Like, you kind of know going into it. No offense to this person, but I don't know, maybe they just really weren't expecting that, or they're talking about some other element of the book, but I don't really know what they're talking about. The ending was pretty expected, but overall, I would say an average read, but a cute and fun read. The cover is really cute, and I would recommend. A good find from Dollar Tree. With these book updates, I basically have read like a couple or a stack of them or whatever, and then I'm giving you guys my insight and my feedback and my review. And this one is still fresh. I just finished it last night, and it's called Lillian Boxfish Takes a Walk. I was surprised that I found this one at Dollar Tree because I've actually heard of it. I've heard of people reading it. I've seen reviews for it. So when I found this, I actually knew what it was. And then I found out that this is the international edition. So this cover isn't actually the US cover, it's the international one, which I just think is kind of cool and unique and rare. So I think this is a pretty good find for Dollar Tree. I don't think any of these other books I've ever heard of or seen elsewhere, so I just thought that was really cool. And this book takes place also in the 80s, 1985, well 1984, New Year's Eve to 1985. And it's about a woman named Lillian Boxfish. And when I finished this book, I found out that it's actually based on a real woman who moved to New York City in the 1930s and became a huge woman in advertising and a poet and all these things. So Lillian Boxfish is based on a real person. However, the story is Lillian's story and not the real woman's story. But elements of the real woman were used in this book, especially like Lillian's poems and her writings were actually the real woman, Margaret Fishladder or something like that. What was her real name? Margaret Fishback. So the real woman was Margaret Fishback. But I just thought that was really cool because I didn't know that, and then I finished reading it and was like, huh, that's how the author was inspired to write this book. And the premise of this one is Lillian moved to New York City in the 1930s. She is a career woman through and through in a time when women get married and they have kids, and basically they're just looking for a husband. And it's more rare for a woman to put her career first, but Lillian, her mom is encouraging her to just get married and be your typical stay-at-home housewife, and Lillian wants no part of that. She moves to New York City to become this crazy, amazing career woman, and she actually achieves it, and she gets everything that she wanted and has this whole life. She works for Macy's, which I thought was really funny because Macy's is real, and she writes a couple poetry books, and then eventually she meets a man and falls in love. And so this book is about Lillian at 85 or 84 years old, and she takes a walk through New York City that ends up being about 10 miles and meets people along the way. And she just talks about how much she loves New York City, how much it's changed, how much she's changed from when she first moved there to how she is now as an old lady. And I always love a good book where the character is reflecting and the character development is told through a timeline that's like the past and now and the back and forth. And so I did enjoy this one. I actually got back into annotating when I was reading it, so I did highlight some quotes that I really liked, and of course I can't find any of them now. Like this one: "If you love something, know that it will leave on a day you are far from ready." So I just started reading this, and then I realized that there's a lot of quotes in this book that I adored. I really loved this one. So this one is a definite 4 stars. I would give it 5 stars, but it was kind of hard to get into and a little slow because it's not really plot driven. It's more of like the character reflecting on her life. And there are definitely some parts where I just didn't feel like reading, so it didn't fully hold my attention. But it is a really beautiful book. It's really witty and smart and sarcastic. And so if you like a female character like that, I would definitely recommend this one. But let's see how Goodreads rated Lillian Boxfish Takes a Walk. So slightly better, but still average, 3.85 stars. But 29,598 people have read this one. So that's a lot more than any of these other books from Dollar Tree. Like I said, this one is actually a popular one that I've heard of and actually seen around. Well, this is kind of funny. The author, Kathleen, she gave herself a 5-star review and said, "I wrote it," so I think it's pretty good. I love when authors do that. I don't know how other people feel, but whenever I'm reviewing a book and rating it, I always will find the authors, and I just think it's really funny when they do that. A lot of people recommend to read or listen to the audiobook for this one, so if you're interested in reading it and you like audiobooks, maybe check that out because it might be a better experience. Okay, so this one, 5 stars. You've got a job you love, you've earned respect and success, even though it's normal to be paid less than a man, but you've met someone. If you marry and have a child, as everyone expects you to, you'll lose the job you love. Welcome to 20th century America, where women are valued for youth and fertility rather than brains and ability. It's enough to drive a girl crazy, or should I say, drive a woman crazy. As Lillian comments, recalling a psychiatrist calling her a reasonable girl. I was not a girl, I was 55. In this wonderful book, we walk the streets of 1980s New York with Lillian, now an old woman, but she's certainly no little old lady stuck in the past. Despite some occasional quaintness in the odd, improbable scene, this is an easy read with real depth. I will say there's a lot going on underneath the plot. Like this review says, Lillian is rare for her time, and maybe not rare for her time, but she doesn't desire what other women want, and she kind of has this nemesis that is your stereotypical, like, I want to get married and I want to have kids and I just want to have a family in the suburbs, and Lillian like resents her. And I thought that was really interesting, having Lillian opposed to this other woman. But Lillian is also very graceful and kind, so that just plays out in a really cool way. But like I said, there's a lot going on under the surface of this book as Lillian reflects back on her life, and a lot of things that were out of her control at a time when she was so different from what other women were living, like the lives that they were living. But anyway, so that's my 2 cents on that. Loved every word. Seriously, this has jumped to the top of my books to recommend. All right, let's see there are not a lot of 1-star reviews, so that is good. The writing really annoyed me. It was just so pompous and it made the book hard to get into. I also found myself not really liking Lillian. There were a few good lines, but I do not recommend this book. See, I loved Lillian, but I could easily see how you wouldn't like her. Melissa said, the story had almost nothing relatable for me. The plot was depressing and boring at the same time. This author has the most annoying prose that I have ever read. Oh, that makes me sad. This one was annoyed by the word choice. All right, but this book is only 284 pages and it took me a month to read. It actually made me hate the entire idea of reading. Oh, that's so sad. Maybe you should have just given up on reading it. I really wanted to like this book, and Lillian is a very interesting character, yet she takes a very long, boring walk. Very disappointed. That's like one of my favorite reviews I've ever read, but I will say I think this book requires a certain kind of reader for it. It was definitely a little piece of work. Like, you did have to think about what you were reading, and you had to think about the word choice and the language, and you had to be fully invested in knowing what was going on under the surface, as well as Lillian just relaying her story to you. But overall, it was one for me and I really liked it. And now I have one left, you guys, just one, and then I will be done with this video. Guys, I finally did it. I have read every book that I bought from Dollar Tree, and the last one that I ended with is called Nameless, which I actually didn't find this one. I believe my aunt did, and she gave me her copy of it because she liked it and she wanted me to read it, and she actually has the other two in the trilogy. I read this one and I enjoyed it, I would say, but it wasn't my favorite, and to me it wasn't worth reading the rest of the trilogy. But because it was the first in the series, I decided to save it for last in case I did want to read it. Unfortunately, it was not my favorite. It's a fantasy retelling of Snow White, and so the main character is trying to figure out where she comes from and who she is, and she doesn't remember anything. And it's a pretty like dark and twisted retelling of the tale. So she's actually found by a gang, and the 7 dwarves are actually like 7 gangs in this city that I'm blanking on the name of. And she lives with one of them who I couldn't figure out. He was just called Papa, so I don't know which one he was supposed to be. But she grows up with him, and then his son as well. And her and the son are in love and like all these things, but she just doesn't know where she comes from. She doesn't have any memory of it. And I liked the idea of this book. I thought it was really interesting having like the 7 dwarves be like the heads of a gang, and then like all these fantasy characters are actually like just it's just a very like segregated city where everyone is dangerous and there's like a lot of criminals and that kind of thing, which I thought was really interesting. But what I didn't like about this book is there's no world building. Like, all of the magic and all of the different types of people and characters, there's just no explanation about any of it. So like, you start reading and she's talking about potential, and like all of these things are capitalized, these like random words, and you realize that they're aspects of like the magic world that she lives in. Like, potential is someone's magic, and then there's like different types of people like Jax, and there's something else that I'm blanking on the name of, Trig maybe, or something like that. But I didn't like that. I felt very thrown in, and I was like, I don't know what any of this means or like why that's important. And also, this character was just really annoying to me. Like, there's this part where she decides to walk home from school, and she lives like all the way across town, and she gets home and it's like this huge drama about the fact that she walked home from school and she's like bleeding because she walked for so long in like shoes that were uncomfortable, and everyone's like fussing over her and they're wondering why she made that decision. And honestly, it just felt like so much drama for no reason, and there wasn't really much of a build-up for this book. It was like a lot of kids are getting kidnapped, and then you find out why, and then it's just like the end. So I was pretty disappointed because I was excited about elements of this book, and I thought that maybe it would be a cool, unique read, which it definitely was. I would recommend for something like fresh and new, but it just wasn't my favorite type of book. And you guys know what's next. We're gonna look at the Goodreads reviews and see what everybody else thought of this book, because I'm not the only one that has read it. So this book was rated 3.52 stars. 3,974 people have read it, so not that many. But the author does have another YA series that is actually pretty popular. I've never heard of it, but it did have quite a few comments, and I think it's like a 5-book series, which is pretty impressive. But let's look at some of these reviews. Also, a lot of these reviews are like 11 years old, so that is, this book is a lot older than I thought it was, which makes sense. But let's start with the 1 star, because this book wasn't like my favorite. I'd probably give it like 3 stars, maybe 2.5. because I did enjoy it, but there wasn't a part of me that like wanted to keep reading. Like I just wanted to know the ending, but I didn't really care. And I actually almost decided to stop reading this book. But then I was like, you know, it's gonna be worth it at the end, so I just finished it. And I think it was worth it because it was an interesting story, but it just wasn't my favorite. But anyway, these 1-star reviews, a lot of people didn't finish because there was no world building, which makes sense. This person said, after getting about halfway through this book, after multiple attempts to read it, I decided to DNF it. I was just not a fan. This is a Snow White retelling, but instead of 7 dwarves, they are a family of vampires that are kind of like a mafia. It was weird. Okay, yeah, I also forgot that the gang people, the mafia, they're vampires, but they're called Strigano, whatever. What is it, like? Why am I blanking on it? Strigoi. They're called Strigoi, so they're not vampires. It's just like a different word for vampires. But yeah, I did forget about that. That wasn't much, but a lot of people did not finish this one, which is really interesting to me because I didn't want to. Like, I almost gave up on this book, and a lot of people did. Amanda said, so horrible, I couldn't even finish it. Yeah, I mean, I'm glad that I read it just to know the full story, but overall, I wouldn't read it again, and I don't want to read the other books, so keep that in mind for this one. Okay, let's see these 5-star reviews. This book is like a double rainbow, a unicorn double rainbow. So beautiful, so intense, but what does it mean? It's a little tough to figure things out at first, but it is totally worth it. The world is dark and disturbing, the writing is artful, and the story is intense. It is not your Disney Snow White at all. As a matter of fact, I forgot that it had anything to do with that story for most of the book. As soon as you start to figure out what things are and what is going on, kind of, it's over. Thank goodness there's another book, because this one was like a drug dealer giving you the first one for free. The other books are not about this character. She is part of a friend group. So the first book is about her and she's Snow White. The second book is about her friend Ellie or Ella or something like that, and she is Cinderella. And then the third one is Ruby, and she is the little Red Riding Hood in that story. So yeah, so the next one isn't even about this girl. I forgot what her name is. It starts with a C, but you can tell Camille. Her name is Camille. Okay, I found someone's 5-star comment, but they said all the things that they were confused about, and I agree, because these are the things that I was talking about, where each time the word is used, it's capitalized, and it obviously means something, but I had no idea what it meant. So she wrote, terms I still do not understand. Potential, twisted, charmer, borrow. Those are all really important aspects of this book, like the twisted thing. Apparently some magical people can turn twisted, which I guess is evil, but then like the twisted people are still part of society, so I was like, I don't know what that means. The potential, I'm guessing, is just the magic that they have. Charmer, I could not tell you. And borrow, I have no idea. Like maybe borrow magic, I don't know. But those are the things that just didn't make sense with this book. Like you were kind of just supposed to know what she was talking about, but I had no idea. And then she said, things I found interesting. For those of you who've read the book, you should know what I'm referring to. Ellen Cinder, Ruby Devar, vampire-like figures, Fae, the White Queen, the Waste, the Great War, Blue Eyes, the Families, Italians. This story, like I had mentioned before, post-apocalyptic supernatural mafia with Snow White incorporated themes. although those themes don't appear until later in the book, after the author tries, and in my opinion fails, at describing the horrific changes to civilization society. The very, very last chapter, however, is one of the most beautiful endings I've ever been privileged enough to read, even if the romance was not as clear-cut as I think it should have been. That's an interesting review. The writing was interesting in this one, which is probably what kept me going for this book. It was unique, the writing was pretty good, but there were just a lot of things that didn't make sense. Like, the author didn't explain things. There was no world building really, so you don't get any like thrown into this world and making sense of it. It's literally just you're in this world and you're just supposed to know what's going on, and you don't. So overall, I maybe would potentially read the second and third book if I was ever bored and needed something like fun and interesting that I've never read before. But overall, this was probably like a 2.5 star read. It wasn't my favorite, but that concludes reading books from Dollar Tree. So, is it worth it to buy your next read at the dollar store? I kind of think so. I think it's really fun to read books that nobody else is talking about and to just be one of the first voices to speak into them, share about them, talk about them, especially with Bookstagram and all the things and the ways that we can share books now. I think it is cool. I think it's fun. I've read some really unique books from finding them at Dollar Tree, and they were only $1 when I bought them. Now they're probably $1.25 like everything else there. But it is interesting that you could find a really good book for $1, so I would not overlook Dollar Tree. But thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully this video is entertaining, because I realized it was a lot more than I thought it would be at the beginning, and I didn't realize how many of these books I had. So I am excited that my shelf, my TBR shelf, is just slowly decreasing in the amount of books that I need to read, but as you can see, I still have a long way to go. So thank you for watching. Make sure to subscribe and keep an eye out for the next video. Bye!